So this is just a run through of my final lighting show. The setup is essentially DMX running through this MIDI clip. So I made a MIDI clip the same length as my test audio, and it's basically just got automation running through the plugin. So this is kind of what's taken the most time to do, and particularly scenes like this where it's all automated and it's just a nightmare really. I've tried to be as creative as possible with it. Yeah, so this is it. So we basically just finished the first half of the scene, and the second song should just go to in the next scene. We're just going to have an automation that fades out. So one of the things that actually happened there is you saw some of the lights lag behind. That's actually sort of deliberate. I have to make sure that each of the RGB channels gets reset in automation, which is super annoying. So you see occasionally some of the lights stutter, and that's just the automation trying to catch up. this is the actual crazy bit. So these bits here. So each one of these is a light trigger for the blue. And then in combination with the backlight red you get the purple colour. Essentially I've just got these little triggers at the very end which should just make it a bit more contrasting and sort of appealing when the lights go completely off to black. And then I've just automated a little red bit at the end so that me and Ed, because we're going to be on stage, can actually see where we're going. Because what's interesting is if I'm thinking about if I do turn off the lights in the hall, I'm going to have to work out a way that me and Ed can still see, so I've got to be really careful with the overall black levels of my like automation. So if there's parts where the lights are off, we have to make sure that me and Ed can still play. So I'm thinking I might have like a little light on my keyboard or something that I can see no matter what happens, but I haven't really decided yet. One of the other things is obviously I don't know how that's going to look in the actual room with the projections overlapping us, so if the projections are on going really intensely, that's obviously going to cause some lighting which will reduce the overall effectiveness of my show. So I'm kind of working out how much sort of space I should include, because it's kind of interesting to think that even though I have all these lighting channels and I can make the gobos and things move, they're probably going to be just automated to the tempo, because it seems like a lot of work to do another set of automation this detailed for just the overall gobos, and they're just here, so they're moving heads, they spin around. Yeah, so it should be really interesting, but that's the overall breakdown of my lighting design, and to be honest, it's not particularly complicated. This is probably the most complicated bit, is within the software itself I've had to create the lighting fixtures, and that's kind of a bit unusual. So if I actually go to my settings folder within program files and NTech, which is the lighting control software, the actual presets that they don't not the presets, the DMX library for my overall controller doesn't exist. So you have to sort of create, I think it's in text, I don't know if I can do this, let's see if I can do it now. Yeah, so if I open it in Notepad, this is what I kind of had to do. I had to create all the lighting shows and say that this is what this channel does, and just being in a text block like that, it makes it significantly difficult to work out what each one does, and I had to do that for each light. So now I've loaded up DMX 1, 2, I think it's just 6, yeah, 6, these little bars are on 6 channels. And then the gobos are on 13, and that's where it's going to get complicated, is programming 13 channels of automation at least per light is a lot of work. So within the software I can use, I'll actually just give an example of that. If I put so right now the dimmer's on red, but I can also use an oscillator. So that's on a square wave right now, going at just 50%, I'll do it at 100, and do the speed every half bar or something like that. So I can actually automate things like that, but the problem with that is, due to the way I've created this, it's been stemmed out, so it's no longer in the original session tempo, so it's kind of a little bit off on the click track. So this is obviously synced to the tempo, so when you start it, it works, but it doesn't seem to work particularly well in my case. The sound tracker is probably what's going to get used on the moving heads, so I can literally separate things almost like a multiband, and then do exactly the same thing with how quick the almost like an envelope follower within Max. I did play around with that, so I think I'm going to use those on the moving heads just to control. They're not particularly important as they are a lot less intense of the lighting system, so it should be okay.